What is up, fellas, and welcome to another episode of Rewriting History with me, the Goob. I'm hearing a slight echo that I don't usually hear. Hopefully that's only on my end. Not sure where that's coming from. Hopefully the audio's all right on your guys' end, though. I had Marcel Foti scheduled for today, but he had to reschedule. I'm thinking and hoping that we'll have him on next week. So this is a fill-in episode. I don't have a whole lot of material planned, but I figured we could just chat about the Vases. Lines are open. You guys are welcome to call in about anything. Doesn't even necessarily have to be history related. I know a lot of stuff's going on with UFOs in New Jersey, so feel free to call in about that stuff. That's interesting too. But I do have a correction that I needed to make about the Vases. It doesn't change any of my positions or arguments, but it is a fact that I had repeated several times that just isn't a fact. I had quoted the Vases as one of the Vases as being within 1/1000th of precision, being less than 1/1000th in its precision. And that isn't an accurate statement. It's 2/1000ths. So I think I took a specific measurement and then I applied that to the entirety of the vase. The entirety of the vase is not quite that precise. It's 2/1000ths. So I was saying less than 1/1000th, 2.5 red blood cells, right? We're dealing with about 6 red blood cells. Still dealing with ridiculous levels of precision, but I was misquoting that a little bit. I was putting out a number that wasn't entirely accurate. And I want to, let me go ahead and share my screen here, get the right thing up for you guys. There you go. Okay, so this is actually someone who tweeted at Matt Bell trying to debunk Matt Bell, but I'm going to use his image trying to debunk him to highlight my point here. So these are heat maps or height maps, more accurately, of some of the vases. This is the vase that I was talking about, vase number 5, that I was quoting as having less than 1/1000th of an inch precision. As you can see here, it has slightly lower quality around the lug handles. All of these vases have lower quality, lower precision around the lug handles. Right on the edges, that really dark red, that's damage. Those are chips coming out. But here, you see those reddish areas, those bluish areas. Those are areas of the vase that are less precise than the rest. So everywhere else on this vase is precise within 2/1000ths of an inch. And it's not only the level of precision, it's also the consistency of the precision that you see here is very clearly indicative of a lathe-like machine. This could not be produced with hand tools. This level of consistency, this level of precision is just well beyond what you would see with hand tools. And the fact that you do have some lower levels of quality up here doesn't take away from the fact that this was turned on a lathe. It's just indicative of the fact that there's 2 different processes going on to make these vases. There's the turning that's happening on the lathe, and then there's the secondary process, likely a hand process for the areas in between the handles. So these areas being a little bit less precise does not detract from the required precision of the lathe itself. And I just wanted to clear that up because, like I said, it was misquoting one of those statistics. And I'm human. I'm going to say things that are incorrect, but I truly don't want to mislead my audience. I'm never intentionally saying things that are incorrect. I try and avoid making broad sweeping statements of fact. Pretty much the only fact you'll hear me declare about the vases is that they weren't made with hand tools. There's clearly a lathe-like machine that is required. That is a statement of fact that I feel very comfortable saying. But, were these made with high technology, a CNC machine? I don't write it off, but I don't try and say that that's the case either. We really don't know. And so when I criticize people like Dan for saying, oh, well, this obviously wasn't done with a CNC machine, That's not me saying that it was done with a CNC machine. It's just pointing out that, no, you don't actually have any foundation of an argument to be making those statements. So me criticizing other people for making these bold declarative statements, it doesn't necessarily mean that I believe the opposite. I like to avoid those types of overly declarative statements. And again, feel free to call in, guys. Calls are extra encouraged. This episode, I do have some cool things to show you, but I've got no structure set up here. I've just got some random cool things to show you, some of those vases that I was talking about from other time periods. If you can even call them vases. Let me pull up a couple images here. I think this is the right tab. So Mechanical Engineering in Ancient Egypt is a series written by Galal Ali Hassan. He's got at least 76 of these papers, and he focuses on a different aspect of mechanical engineering in ancient Egypt for each one. I haven't found a great way to search all of his papers, so I'm still trying to find all of the different parts. But I pulled up a couple of the more interesting parts. Here's an alabaster vase from the Middle Kingdom. Here's a marble breccia coal pot from the 12th dynasty. So these are getting, later in time. A limestone vase from the Middle Kingdom. An obsidian cosmetic vessel from the 12th dynasty. And I don't know if these have sizes. If I were to read this, this one here is 2 centimeters in height. This little alabaster pot here is 2 centimeters in height. So something that doesn't get translated very well a lot of the time. I'm not showing the screen. Solid. But here's what we were looking at. I hadn't shown too much. I really only had shown these images. But this little pot right here, 2 centimeters, 2.1 centimeters, 210 millimeters. They're very, very tiny. Not all of these are very tiny, but like this one's definitely very tiny. I'm pretty sure this one is very tiny as well. I'm not seeing a specific 47 millimeters. Tiny, tiny little pots. A lot of these vases and vessels, because vase might not really encompass what all of these are, but a lot of them are very, very small. Anhydrite cosmetic vessel, pretty cool looking little thing from the 12th dynasty. Another anhydrite from the 12th dynasty. An alabaster canopic jar. So the canopic jars are, part of the burial. Pretty darn cool calcite jug. You see this design on a couple pieces where you have these lines coming up the top and then turning into a band around the handle. It's a small little picture, so I don't know how well you can necessarily see that there. But that's a design you'll find in a repeated. It's a cool little design. I really have to get better at showing the screen that I'm trying to show you guys. I do that at least once an episode. Beautiful, beautiful alabaster pot there from the 18th dynasty. Different design than you're usually seeing, right? That's like a very modern looking flower vase design. Some gold on some of these. A little goblet. And here we start getting into some of the really extravagant stuff. So I don't even know, alabaster vase, they're calling it a vase, but would you even call that a vase at this point? But yeah, these obviously aren't turned on a lathe, but the designs are really getting quite extravagant here. There's some better pictures of this one. And I mean, there's like the individual fingers are carved. It's really, really quite extravagant. The detail, you got feathers on the birds and stuff, and these complex shapes. A little fish pot that is much more reminiscent in style to some of those pre-dynastic pots. One of the, I've shown this one before. This is much later. It's an obsidian jar from the 18th dynasty. and it looks really, 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 really sleek and clean. It looks really, really very symmetrical, very polished. I would love to get some measurements of stuff like this from these later dynasties, from like the 18th dynasty around the time of Ramses, when you do see this resurgence in stoneworking. What levels of precision were they producing in these time periods? I have no idea. I can say it looks fantastically precise, but I would love to get some good measurements on items like this and directly compare them to the pre-dynastic items. And I mean, that is some really sleek, looks like a bullet, but fantastic design there. Really, really sleek looking stuff. And in my second ever episode, I talk about Ramses the Great, Ramses II, the greatest thief of history, and I cover some of his statues and how I believe, to my satisfaction, I proved that he was actually making those statues. So, if you're sitting here looking at those vases and wondering, are those potentially inherited all the way from pre-dynastic Egypt? Are those beautiful vases so beautiful because they were from that earlier time period? I don't think they are. I think there's cases to be made for that. You definitely do find some beautiful older vases in later time periods of Egypt, but specifically those obsidian ones, I think those are from that time period. I think those are, again, you're seeing this resurgence in ability to work stone. They did depict Booba in stone. I guess they're precise. They're not like the Indian Booba. They're not like the bolt-ons. I wonder what that tweet is. I don't think I can actually like copy your comment. Yeah, I don't seem to have a way. I have no way to copy your comment, so I can't go. I can just show it on the screen, so I can't check out what that tweet is. But let's see some of the other. I've got some more vases to show you guys. Again, feel free to call in, fellas, because other than these vases to show you, I don't have a whole lot. This is pottery, pre-dynastic to Old Kingdom period. So this is dealing in the same time ranges that we're looking at these vases, these stone vases, but this is the pottery from that time period. So you have this highly precise stone vessels, and then this is the pottery coming from those same time periods. And it's actually very impressive pottery. This Badarian pottery, which is like the oldest, this is even before Nikeda. Really, really beautiful pottery. You can see it's highly polished. It's two-tone. It's well-shaped. It's a lot better looking than a lot of the later pottery from like early dynastic in slightly later dynastic times, from all the way from Badarian time periods, which is going back very, very far before the Nikkedans, right? These are over 6,000 years old. These are very, very old. And here's an interesting little pottery vessel, right? You got some feet on the bottom. Quite interesting. Little vessel there from Nikkeda, early Nikkedan period. And then this, who is mimicking who? Is this mimicking the stone vessels? Are the stone vessels mimicking these pottery vessels? Because they're definitely it's clearly the same type of design. One is mimicking the other. I just don't know which way. I believe these are actually connected. It's hard to tell from this image, but they're described as dual pottery jars. I think these are actually like connected in between there. I'm not 100% sure. But some interesting pottery. You see these wavy handles. You find that occasionally on the stone vases as well. You'll see like this little snake sine wave handle design. Obviously, those can't be turned on the lathe either. Here's a pottery wheel being depicted all the way back to the 4th dynasty. So this is the time of Khufu. This is the time of the Great Pyramids. Allegedly, there were no potter's wheel for any of this stuff, though. From the Nakadan, from the Badarian, they were allegedly not using potter's wheels, but they had precision lathes. Pretty good looking plate there. Some alabaster from Egypt. Here's from the 5th dynasty, so just after the 4th dynasty, just after the Great Pyramid. That's a pretty beautiful looking alabaster vessel there. Far less precise looking alabaster from the 1st dynasty. Measuring spoons, And these are vases for kings. And I'm not saying that these are low quality. I mean, it looks pretty nice there, but some of the vessels again, that looks actually very, very nice and clean. But like, it is interesting that you'll see some of these vessels for kings, they'll have the king's name on them, and they look pretty low quality sometimes. Gotta lock up my chickens. But yeah, I don't know. Just wanted to show off some of the other vessels from other time periods. Again, you've got some really, really extravagant stuff from the 18th dynasty. Things start to get pretty fancy around this time period. A nice little llama. Yeah. All right. I guess I will talk a little bit about like the drama that's in this sphere. I don't know. I made my correction at the beginning of the episode, right? And it's not a big deal to correct yourself. Like it's not hard to admit you're wrong and make a correction. But this field has all conversation has completely died. Like, it has become so hostile. There is no more polite disagreement in this field anymore. And I really blame Dibble and Dan for that. I mean, when the Dibble debate first aired, I was stating in no uncertain terms, this is the death of archaeology. This is it. This is like the end of archaeology. This is the death blow. I was going on and on about just how terrible that Dibble debate was and the impact that it was going to have on this whole field. And then you had Dan respond to it, and it only amplified that impact, and it dragged everyone down to just the dirtiest of the dirty, everything scoring points against the other side. No, everyone is putting everyone else into the most extreme camps. You're either in the camp of like, you're not allowed to question anything, you must be an absolute lockstep with the mainstream, or it's alien laser beams. And it's like, that's how everyone else is viewing everyone else. And it's just not allowing for any type of discourse at all. And I really, really put the blame on specifically Dan and Dibble. The way that they have impacted the ability for people to just have a conversation in this space, I don't think can be overstated. There just is no communication anymore. It's just mudslinging. It's all fighting and talking past each other. And it's very evident that no one even cares about trying to have a conversation anymore. When I point out the fact that high technology hasn't even been defined, this isn't a semantics thing. This is a major, major issue. You have people like Night Scarab who are trying to debunk the idea of high technology in the ancient past. What is it he's debunking? What is high technology? This isn't semantics. This is a huge deal. It really, really matters. And no one cares about defining this kind of stuff because no one actually cares about having a conversation. They just want to score points on the other side. They do not care that they're not even talking about the same thing. They just want to call the other side stupid and sling mud. So it's really sad to see the state of things, and I am seeing some people start to push back against this. Like I'm seeing, I think it's being noticed by more than just me, right? You had Matt Bell just invite Kaylee, History with Kaylee on, and they obviously don't agree with each other. She's more mainstream. He's part of the Vase project. And yeah, I think people are realizing that the level of discourse has gotten pretty ridiculous, and it needs to be reeled back. And I do hope that this is a temporary thing and this is not indicative of a long-term trend. But the current status is, it's dismal. It's very dismal. Anyone want to call in? You can talk about the drones, man. You can talk. Like I said, this was supposed to be Marcel Foti, so I don't have stuff prepared. So feel free to call in and chat. Yeah, and it's narcissists and sociopaths welcome. I think it's very funny that Dan goes after Dibble the way he does. This is my opinion, right? This is me being a psychologist here, right? But like, I think that Dan hates Dibble so much because Dan realizes that he's the exact same person. Dibble is holding up a mirror to Dan. Like the reason that Dan goes after him so viciously is because he's so intimately familiar with all of Dibble's behavior because it's his behavior. He hates Dan because he hates himself. That's my diagnosis there, because it really is remarkable. All of the things that Dan goes after Dibble for are all things that he does himself. Yeah, they're two sides of the same coin. He absolutely is the most toxic person in this space. And, I was alluding to this a lot in the Discord way back when that Dibble debate first happened, that I was really, really concerned about the impact that Dan was going to have on this space overall, and that it was going to be very detrimental. And it's played out exactly as I feared it would. And the discourse has come to a complete and total end. And I really do. I put a lot of the blame on Dan for that. But I believe that we have achieved high technology in the past, right? We've been around for 300,000 years. I think that the idea that we've not done anything impressive until the last 10,000 is a ridiculous idea to me. It's very similar to the idea of aliens. We have no proof of intelligent life in the universe, but the universe is just so vast, it's so big, it's kind of ridiculous to assume that there isn't any out there, even though we have no proof of it. And it's the same exact logic for ancient lost civilizations. We've been around for at least 300,000 years. The world is a very big place. That's a very long time. The idea that we never did anything just because we haven't found it yet is very silly to me. So I do believe in the idea of ancient high technology and lost civilizations. But I also believe that most alternate historians are largely mistaken when they accredit every impressive thing that they see to 12,000 years ago. There's a couple examples that maybe could be, up in the mountains of Peru, stuff could theoretically last a lot longer up there. But, I made my argument about South and Central America, how there was a larger civilization, a more impressive, more grand civilization there than anything that was present in Europe at the same time. And it was fully erased, fully swallowed up by the jungle in under 100 years. So things lasting 12,000 years, all the destruction of human nature of wars and everything else, and then just nature, I think it's a mistaken idea. I don't think what we're seeing are remnants from 12,000 years ago. But I do think that things were around 12,000 years ago, even further back, whenever you want to assign them. I think we were doing things. It's just the idea of actually finding it is a stretch, just like the idea of actually finding intelligent life in the universe is a stretch. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, though. I've given a couple definitions for high tech. My preferred definition is any technology that's sufficiently outside of what we would expect for the time period. So a black powder rifle in ancient Egypt would be high technology. I don't think anyone would consider a black powder rifle high technology today, right? So high technology kind of changes. It's kind of amorphous. It's kind of hard to define. But I think most people could agree if we found a black powder rifle 5,000 years ago in ancient Egypt, that would be like really out of line with what we'd expect to find, and probably reasonable to call that high technology. So these vases showing production abilities that rival ours today with our high technology in a time period that isn't even supposed to have the potter's wheel, I would call that high technology. I would say that, yes, this is proof of high technology. But again, it really depends what definition you're working with. Other people obviously wouldn't. You have a lot of these debunkers, these anti-Vase propagandists that are now shifting their goalposts. And a lot of them are now taking the position that a lathe in pre-dynastic Egypt is no big deal. There's nothing to see here. It's just the product of a lathe. These vases are nothing. Well, that's obviously not what their position originally was, right? Or else there wouldn't have been this massive effort to debunk them. Again, if these vases are what you would expect to see, if they matched the level of quality that's expected, there never would have even been a story here. The whole reason these blew up is because they are so high quality. They are so far removed from what we would expect to find from these time periods. So don't let the anti-Vase propagandists gaslight you and be like, yeah, it's just a lathe. We always expected it to be a lathe. It's no big deal. No, it's a huge deal. Pushing the lathe back all the way to a civilization that allegedly doesn't even have the potter's wheel is a massive deal. That's a huge change. But yeah, the UFOs are very interesting. Because they're definitely not a foreign government. I can pretty safely say that much for sure. What was I don't even know who it was, but someone saying it's an Iranian mothership off the coast. That's completely ridiculous. The government is not reacting like it's a foreign government, which leaves, in my mind, two possibilities. One is that these are our government, and the other is that these actually are aliens, and they just don't know how to deal with them. They can't respond to them because they're aliens. Their tech is way beyond ours. And so they're just trying to act like they're not happening. I don't really think that's it either. I think we'd be seeing a bit different response if that was the case. So why the hell is our government flying all of these prototype drones in New Jersey? I don't know. It's quite strange. Yeah, looking for a nuke. It's not a bad theory, but you're seeing these things in like tight clusters. They're not even really like fanning out and searching the area. I don't think the behavior really necessarily matches a nuke search either, unless it is also, which this is entirely possible, that there's just distraction going along with it. So you have drones that are looking for a nuke, and then they're just trying to put up, confusing signals to confuse people so it's not clear what they're doing. I guess that's entirely possible. But yeah, I don't know. If it is Project Bluebeam, if this is them deploying Project Bluebeam, good God, I'm disappointed. I was not that I want to see Project Bluebeam actually be deployed, but like I was hoping for way more impressiveness than this for that. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was sort of saying, and that kind of makes sense to some degree, um, and it could also be their ability to run cover. Okay, so we have to we have to enact this operation, whether it be searching for a dirty bomb or something else. Like, how effectively are we able to distract from that and draw attention away and get people focusing on things like aliens? Yeah, that is a totally possible explanation. Got some more pottery here. Might as well show it. This is pottery from the Middle to New Kingdoms. And you can look at that. That's clearly not made on a potter's wheel. This is from the early Middle Kingdom. You know, so again, it's just strange discrepancies when you have these highly precise stone vases from earlier time periods. You see the stone vase production drop off. They stop making them, and then they switch to pottery and soft stone vessels and of very obviously lower quality. This pottery isn't even nearly as good as the pottery of the Badarian culture, you know, pre-Nicadan. The Badarian pottery is all far more impressive than this. None of this has a polished glaze on it. It's not nearly as symmetrical or as clean. I mean, this looks like something that I would have made as a kid right here. This is like I used to go and get clay from the stream bed by my house and make stuff just like that. You know, these are a little bit more impressive here. It's an interesting little duck vessel. And here's like an attempt to recreate that Badarian style with the two colors. Here's some more impressive pottery, but still it is just very interesting to track the production and the quality of these different things and trying to make sense of it. It's difficult to try and make sense of. Almost looks Native American, you know, kind of like feather design. You see things like that over here. Yeah, let's see. I've got a couple pictures as well that I wanted to show. Oops. Let's not show that screen. Doxed myself a little. That's okay. Get the right screen up here. Okay. So here we've got, this is, I actually don't know exactly what time period this is from. I think it's around the 18th dynasty. It's definitely later. It looks extremely precise to me. This is after lathes were acknowledged in Egypt, so it's not too surprising that you see what appears to be lathe work from this time period. But it's a beautiful stone piece, very precise looking stone piece. This is pre-dynastic. This is Nicadan. They made a lot of these frog vessels. They made a lot of animal vessels in general, but frogs specifically. Here we got a nice bowl from the 4th dynasty with those folded lobes, kind of akin to the schist disc, right? There's a whole, this was like a design style that was made around these time periods. There's more bowls like this with the folded lobes. I pulled this up before and I suggested that this might be an incomplete vase, that, you know, they were working their way up to the neck and it broke, and it could be, but I think this is probably pottery that we're looking at. I really don't know. It's a confusing piece either way, because if it's pottery, like, why is it solid? It appears to be solid inside. Let's blow this up a little bit, right? But if this is stone that was being turned into a vase, not only have they gone and shaped the vase all the way up to the neck and then it broke before, coring it out or doing anything inside, but it's also polished. So they're shaping and polishing in one step. Again, I don't know. It looks like stone to me. Could this be pottery? It's a very confusing piece, regardless of what it is. But if that is an incomplete stone vase, it's very interesting how the shaping and the polishing appear to be done in one stage. They haven't even finished, I assume, shaping the top of this. Something broke, something went wrong, and it was abandoned. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure this is stone. Looks like it. It's a very curious piece if it is. Very curious piece if it is. This is a mace head. So I talked about the mace heads in Peru. These ones were in Egypt. These are real early dynastic time periods. There's a lot of these made. They're made out of hard stone, like gneiss and granite and diorite. From the images that I've seen, they don't really seem to be displaying exceptional levels of precision, probably because they're mace heads and they just don't require it. This is a very, very impressive, nice bowl from the 4th dynasty. Super impressive work. It's very, very thin. You can almost see through it. It looks very symmetrical. It looks very clean. And then it has this spout that comes out below the rim of the bowl. Really, really beautiful work from the 4th dynasty here, or at least attributed to the 4th dynasty. Some more frog vessels from Nikeda. They like their frogs. And some of these frogs are hollowed out like this. Some of them just have straight tube drills down. This is a schist piece. This is in the Petrie Museum. It's described as being as thin as cardstock, as thin as paper. So this schist piece, this schist vase, very obviously turned on a lathe, right? You don't need to have, your eyes can tell you that. I really dislike from the side of the science how they try and convince you that you can't trust your senses. Don't believe your lion eyes, and your eyes are not a stand-in for real measurements, but you can look at stuff and you can make determinations. You can look at this thing and you can very obviously tell that it was turned on a lathe. You do not need to measure this to look at it and go, that was very clearly turned on a lathe. So, yeah. All right. I'm out. No one wanted to call in. I thought I'd get some calls today. I thought, after all that discussion on the vases, I thought people might have questions or comments on the vases, but no calls. So I accidentally clicked the back button on my mouse. And it seems like the stream stayed up, so I just popped out for a second. I'm back. I thought that was going to end the stream. But yeah, I expected, questions about my positions on the vases or stuff like that, but I guess there aren't any. So yeah, yeah, probably not this response, right? I don't know. The drones are confusing. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had positions on the drones. I wish I had things to add, but I really don't. I just I don't. So anyways, that's the episode. next week, hopefully, I'll let you know. I'll keep you updated in the Discord and on Twitter and on YouTube. I'll probably post something, but hopefully Marcel Foti will be on next week. And yeah, I'll let you know though. And peace out, fellas.